Japanese tea master once said, "All can find peace in a bowl of tea." The Japanese people are keenly aware of inner harmony. It is said that each Japanese person cherishes some quiet place, whether it be in the world or within the heart, where one can find peace and serenity, a retreat from everyday cares and worries. The word jaku can be used to mean tranquility, peace of mind, oneness with nature. It is said that when a Japanese person bows his head in prayer with palms pressed together, it is jaku, a quiet place. Many of the traditions and arts of Japan are based on the concept of harmony and attaining tranquility through entering into a quiet place. Ikebana, the art of flower arranging, garden design, and the tea ceremony, all are founded in this search for oneness and harmony. The Japanese seek tranquility in simple things. In Japan, there's a phrase, "a matter of tea and rice," used to refer to something extremely common and ordinary. The traditional tea ceremony called cha-no-yu, or cha-do, is based on a common ordinary event, tea drinking. Cha-do means the way of tea. Cha means tea, do is the way. A bowl of tea prepared according to the principles of cha-do is a ritual devoted to inner harmony. In order to understand the procedure and significance of the tea ceremony, it is necessary to consider the historical and religious developments which led to it. In the 8th century, the priest Saicho, founder of the Buddhist Tendai sect, brought tea back with him to Japan from a study trip to China. Green tea was originally used by the Zen Buddhist priests as a stimulant during long hours of practicing meditation. The Zen monks who used tea in Japan laid the spiritual foundations for cha-do. These precepts left great latitude to develop the aesthetics of tea conjoined with the principles of Zen. The Zen scholar D.T. Suzuki says, "Zen teaches nothing. It merely enables us to wake up and become aware. It does not teach, it points." Seated Zen meditation, Zazen, is meant to awaken us from our cultural trance, silence the self, and return us to our original state of grace. Ceremonial tea manners, the rules governing tea drinking, developed from the tea rituals brought from China by the Zen monks. The custom of tea drinking declined for a time, but in the 12th century was reintroduced as a cultural aspect of China. This time it spread through all of Japan, and the people began to practice cha-do in a number of forms. It was during this time that the foundation of the tea ceremony was laid by two men, Noami, leading master of tea ceremonies for aristocratic circles in Kyoto, and Morato Shuko, a Zen priest who founded a school of tea aimed at simplicity and naturalness.
The relationship between the tea ceremony and nature is very deep. Japan has 4 distinct seasons, so those engaged in the tea ceremony have always walked with nature. We are a culture made of ways. This is the heart and soul. Everything that has the way in its name combines art and soul together. For this reason, the tea ceremony is called the Way of Tea.
In his tea practice, Shuko adopted the principles of Zen, which taught that the soul could find satisfaction in the performance of everyday actions. The final form of the tea ceremony, which has been preserved down to the present day, was codified by Senno Rikyu at the direction of the shogun Hideyoshi. Rikyu combined the various schools and practices of his day into a formally defined art form. While Chado is based on the ordinary, everyday act of drinking tea, rules were set down imposing a kind of order and design. Chado was established as a ceremonial form based on these rules. In Chado, all the problems and distractions of everyday life are to be left behind. The guest is to appreciate the tea room and its setting, the utensils used in serving tea, the simple scroll, the flower arrangement, and above all, the skill and grace of the host. The host must perform the ceremony to the best of one's ability, observing all the precepts, following all the complex forms of movement, and yet keeping one's movements and actions simple, fluid, and graceful. For both the host and guest, Chado is meant to be a harmonious and tranquil expression of friendship. Part of the reason for tea's painstakingly rehearsed movements with cloths, implements, and water is to create harmony. These movements may appear gratuitous, but are all designed to get the bowl of green tea made in the most natural, beautiful, and economical way. Ultimately, the true way of tea is largely a state of mind. The challenge is not in making a bowl of tea, but in showing sublime hospitality. With a pure heart and loving intentions, a host does everything in his power to provide comfort and consideration to the guest. The guest graciously returns the respect. In the Japanese frame of mind, comfort means no awkwardness. Training in tea is done to ensure that the movements of the host become second nature. All of the movements must be graceful and effortless. Only then will the guest be completely at ease. The Japanese have a deep regard for things simple and plain. This is the concept of wabi, prized by the tea masters of the day. Unpretentious, unassuming, rough wear began to be used because they were felt to be richer in feeling than the exquisite Chinese pieces. A tea master once said, "I dislike the moon when it is totally without clouds." In essence, he was saying that there is more profound feeling in the simple homely tea wares of the Japanese peasant than there is in the perfect, unmarred pieces from China. As Chado grew in popularity, there developed a kind of tea ethic. There was an emphasis on furumai. Originally, furumai applied only to one's own conduct, but eventually it came to mean the way which one treated others, how one received and entertained. The issue of entertaining and showing hospitality became central. In an abstract sense, furumai came to indicate the question of one's attitude and feeling in the tea gathering. Eventually, furumai was summed up as ichigo ichi, one meeting in a lifetime.
Ichigo ichi というのは
Ichigo ichi means that what happened to us now is only for now, and that this moment will never come back to us. When a certain thing happened to us, that is ichigo ichi. The feeling of that moment is the first and the last.
One should behave toward the group as though that gathering were to be the only encounter with those present in one's entire lifetime. This is the meaning of ichigo ichi. Chado, as conceived by Rikyu, is characterized by its unique sense of aesthetics, achieved by elevating the ordinary to the extraordinary, by seeking beauty in the most mundane affairs. He gave it an almost religious quality. The beauty of the tea ceremony is beauty that makes an artist of the viewer. Rikyu summarized the basic principles of Chado with 4 characteristics: wa, kei, sei, Jaku. Wa means harmony. Harmony between people, harmony with nature, harmony with the utensils of the ceremony and the manner in which they are used. Kei means respect. Respect is paid to all things. Sei means purity and implies both worldly and spiritual cleanliness. Jaku refers to tranquility.
本当にやはり
I feel strongly as I grow older that my involvement in the tea ceremony has helped my heart and mind. The feeling of loneliness has lessened, and I am grateful that I have been able to live a joyful life.
From the beginning of the 16th century, the tea room or chashitsu, constructed exclusively for holding tea gatherings, made its appearance. The tea garden became an integral part of the tea ceremony. Tea houses were built in the midst of gardens. The tea house and garden at Ginkakuji, known as the Silver Pavilion, were designed by Shuko. It is now a national treasure. Gardens reproduce a complex pattern carefully designed to achieve an effect of complete naturalness. The tea garden was to prepare guests by its consummate beauty and form for the tea ceremony. The path to the tea house leads past trees, bushes, and stone lanterns called ishidori. There are stepping stones set in moss, and usually a stone water basin, chosubachi, where the guests would rinse their mouths and hands. The tea house is usually at the far end of the inner garden. It is an unpretentious structure of rustic type with a thatched roof. Both the style and materials are simple. An air of freshness and coolness is given to the setting by the use of water sprinkled on the stones, bushes, and moss. Streams and ponds fill the garden. Guests enter the tea room through a low doorway, which obliges them to enter on their knees, symbolizing the equality of all the participants and the humility of each individual. All participants leave outside any symbols of class status. Swords, jewelry, watches, even wedding rings are left out in order to help create an atmosphere of harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. The way of tea is still practiced in modern Japan according to the 7 rules of tea developed by Sen no Rikyu. Make a delicious bowl of tea. Lay the charcoal so that it heats the water. Arrange the flowers as they are in the field. In summer, suggest coolness. In winter, warmth. Do everything ahead of time. Prepare for rain. And give those with whom you find yourself every consideration. Like Chado, the gardens of Japan are designed to create complete harmony and tranquility. The Japanese designed niwa, or gardens, to be quiet places where one could find peace. The garden became an important part of shrine, temple, palace, and pavilion design. As the Pure Land sect of Buddhism became influential, wealthy believers incorporated Pure Land pavilions and gardens into their estates. Byodo-in, the Phoenix Hall, has one of the oldest and best Pure Land gardens. The Phoenix Hall of Byodo-in faces east. The pond in front of the hall represents the Western Ocean. Beyond that ocean lies the world of mankind. The wisteria bowers and willows around the pond add a gentle sensitivity to the scene. Kinkakuji, known as the Golden Pavilion, is a 3-storied villa built in 1397 by the shogun Ashikaga Yoshimitsu. The name kinkakuji derives from the gold leaf used to decorate the inside and outside of the second and third stories. In the center of the garden and facing the villa is the Kyoko, or mirror lake. Few other temples in Japan have a more wonderful landscape than Kinkakuji. The garden and pond are treasures of which the Japanese are justly proud. A young priest, obsessed with the idea that the only thing that would bring his aesthetic senses to perfection would be the sight of the villa in flames, burned the original building to the ground. Reconstruction of Kinkakuji was finished in 1955. Another garden treasure of the Japanese is the rock garden at Roanji. It is one of the most famous of sekitai, or rock gardens. The Zen-influenced Japanese rock gardens create abstract representations of nature.
The rock garden extends from the front center of the temple. There are 5 rocks to the left, 2 towards the abura fence. Next, there are 3, then 2, and finally 3. These 15 rocks form 5 rock structures. No matter how you look at this garden, you cannot look at more than 1 or 2 structures at the same time. We do not know why it was built this way, and nobody knows who the artist was. We presently explain that when we look at it as the sea, we interpret the rocks as the islands that float in the sea. When we look at it as the cloud, we interpret them as the mountains that peer through the clouds, or we say that it is the garden of our hearts. No matter which interpretation one gives, none is a mistake. Each individual sees something different and feels differently. I feel that the person that created this is asking us to consider what is lacking within us.
In the outer garden of Roanji is the sukubai, or stone wash basin for the tea room. The basin has a unique inscription. It reads, "I learn only to be contented." The concept is extremely important in Zen philosophy. He who learns only to be contented is spiritually rich, while he who does not is spiritually poor, even though he is materially wealthy. The art of flower arranging, ikebana, is an expression of the aesthetic sensibility of the Japanese and is deeply rooted in the cultural life of Japan. Ikebana was originally introduced from China as floral decoration in front of statues of the Buddha. It later developed as an independent art form.
Flower arranging comes from the fact that the Japanese have a unique way of thinking. Japanese think that there is a God in all things in the universe. We think that more gods exist in larger living things like pine trees. It all started from this. Then Buddhism came in, and it became a custom to make offerings of flowers. From here, we became accustomed to decorating with flowers and moved on to flower arranging. What gives me joy as I do flower arranging isn't so much the arranging itself, but the fact that I can take interest in growing things. This is what is most important to me.
The art of ikebana abstracts nature. Flower arranging ranks with the tea ceremony as one of the characteristic arts of Japan. It is also called kado, the way of flowers. Ikebana was especially popular among the nobility and Buddhist priests. Between the 14th and 16th centuries, the art became widely practiced among ordinary people. It gained increased expressive force after the inclusion of a vase or bowl in the arrangement. It has become valued as an art of appreciation and expression. Today there are many different schools and ways of ikebana. It is widely practiced among the Japanese.
The principle of my Japanese cooking is based on shiki, 4 distinct seasons. Japanese gardens and then flowers are the inspiration. I make sure that the freshness of the fish and other items are at their best when the food is served to the customers.
There are 3 important features which characterize traditional Japanese food and food preparation. First, the premium which is placed on freshness, naturalness, and maintaining innate flavor. Second, the Japanese aesthetic sense is displayed in the arrangement of the food and in the choice of receptacles for serving it. The entire presentation must be as pleasing to the eye as it is to the palate. Third, Japanese cooking derives from a non-meat eating culture. The staple foods are rice and fish. Vegetables are the complement. Together they form a harmonious whole. The Japanese have made food preparation and presentation an art form. In the martial arts, one is trained to meet an adversary calmly. The stronger is the one who can maintain and regain his stance and composure most quickly after engagement.
Harmony
in Budo means that you do not go against the opponent's attack, but become one with the opponent. However, if we have to think of becoming one, then there is still a gap between you and the other person. Speaking in terms of Aikido, without thinking about it, I unconsciously become one with the opponent at that time. If that happens naturally, without being aware of it, then we have become one with the environment and time. I feel that this is the true meaning of harmony.
In Japan, one finds peace and harmony within one's own quiet place. Solitude gives audience to the yearnings of the heart. Harmony may be found in a bowl of tea, a flower arrangement, even in combat. The individual spirit transcends the body and becomes a part of the greater body of nature. This, then, is peace. Harmony with the universe, with oneself. The peace that each desires and must find for oneself.